What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist? Or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked, as well as what this podcast is about. In this show, we will examine past life memories, speak with professional hypnotherapists, astral projection practitioners, psychics, and much more. All in an attempt to decipher this riddle. So welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to the regression session. Welcome back to the regression session. My name is Ian, and this week we're going to be hearing from Fiona Harris. This is part one of the interview, and part two will be released next week. Fiona is a past life regression practitioner as well as a Reiki healer, and she's been practicing Reiki and past life regression for over 2 decades, and I couldn't be happier to have her on the show. And be sure to check out Fiona's website, clearpathhealing.com, where you can learn more about her services and what she's all about. If you or somebody you know wants to come on my show and talk about their spiritual experiences, their past life memories, astral projection experiences, what have you, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com. Let's move into today's interview with Fiona. Hey Fiona, thanks for coming onto the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I know we've been talking forever and we just started recording, but if you could just take a second to kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about how you got into becoming a past life practitioner.
Absolutely. So I am living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I've been doing past life work since about 1995. And I kind of actually fell into it as an energy worker. I was doing Reiki way back then, and a lot of my clients started spontaneously having past life memories, which at the time I had no interest. I had no real belief or disbelief about it. And it wasn't until I had my own past life experience that I realized that it was a real true thing and it was happening. I wasn't able to control it though. Like I couldn't control whether my clients, had an experience or not. And there were times when I was able to read a client's past life, but again, it was spontaneous. It was just a lucky thing if it happened. And I could go for months without it happening, and then it could happen every week. And then, so I could kind of continued on with doing Reiki and having that. And then I stopped for, probably 13 or 14 years. I had 2 kids and I was too busy to do anything. And just in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe 6 years, I've kind of gotten back into it and actually went and trained as a hypnotherapist. And my plan at the time was to focus on depression, anxiety, and childhood trauma, which is still a big part of what I do. But all that past life stuff just started coming back again. And now I kind of focus more on past life work and also quantum hypnosis as well. So, and it's exploding. Like there's so many new practitioners and so many people are coming and trying it out. And now that everyone's, being able to work online, it's really easy to access all of this. And we also have, I'm sure if anyone's interested in past life regressions, if you go on YouTube, there are so many videos on there that even if you don't have access to a practitioner or can't afford one, the online regressions, they're not as intense and involved, but you can still have a fantastic experience, just right through YouTube. So yeah, it's a magical world, and it's becoming more and more magical every single day.
Yeah, and I feel like I kind of almost feel like people are almost on the verge of, like, humanity in general. I kind of feel like we're almost on the verge of some kind of an awakening, and I don't know why I feel that way. But it's just like more and more people. I think it's because of the internet, but more and more people are coming into this. There's more and more people, just like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of moving away from religious dogmas. They're kind of moving away from prejudice and things like that. For the most part, there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely some resistance.
Oh yeah, there definitely is. Well, it's funny that you kind of said, oh, maybe it's because of the internet. I mean, the internet definitely helps it along, but I know, as someone who has been doing energy work for years, that it's not just that, because I'm noticing that sessions with clients are changing. Like, even, I don't know, I'm going to say, maybe let's say 4 years ago, I was doing past life regressions, and they were just all regular past life regressions, nothing weird, like, oh, I was a farmer and I got killed in the field, or, normal kind of stuff. And then I noticed, I don't know, I'm going to say around 2017 is when I started seeing a difference. And what I saw first was I started getting random groups of clients. Like, I go for 2 months where all of my clients had a past life where they died of suicide, you know, um, or I'd have a whole bunch of clients who were dealing with, sexual abuse or stuff like that. And then one day I had a woman come, and when she showed up at my door, I looked at her and I was like, oh my God, like, this woman, she was a witch in a past life. I can tell. And sure enough, I regressed her, or I did a reading on her. I can't remember. And she had a past life where she was a witch. And then bang, bang, bang. So many groups of clients coming in and having these past life memories of, just all of the horrible things that happened to you. If I lived 300 years ago, 400 years ago, I'd be a witch, and I'd be, burned at the stake or hung or imprisoned or, sent off from my village. So I noticed there just seemed to, and then I had a lot of clients who'd been in wars. And sometimes a client would come in, they'd have a regression or a reading, and then more soldiers would come in. And it started feeling like my energy work was not just with my client. It was almost like they were bringing groups of people with them. And then I started doing genocide, and that was a really, really, and I still struggle when I have clients where there's a genocide experience. It's very, very heavy on a spiritual and energetic level. But then after that, I started getting clients, and this was before I knew about quantum hypnosis. I randomly was getting clients where I was experiencing, or they were experiencing, being an animal, or an insect or something otherworldly. And now that's the norm. Even regular clients come to see me who don't really know what they're getting into, and they'll have just a crazy, crazy experience. Like, it's not just the internet. It's not just people, being aware of something different. It's like, I think energetically there is a shift in consciousness. And I think it's been going on for a long time, but it's gaining momentum. And I don't think there's going to be that one special day, where the trumpets come out and the skies part, and we're all like, oh my God, I'm spiritual. I think it's going to be different for every human being. So it's going to be on an individual kind of level.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was referring to as far as like an awakening, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because it is happening all over the place. It's happening up there in Canada. It's definitely happening a lot slower down here in the US, but it's happening all over the place. because I'm in different groups of past life practitioners and people looking for advice on past lives, and they're all over the world. So,
Mhm.
yeah, there is definitely something to what you're saying, and it makes me kind of wonder, like, why now? You know what? Besides, obviously, we can't attribute it to any one thing. So the internet, that's just a vehicle. But
Mhm.
it makes me wonder, like, why now? Why is this coming up? Like, I only recently, pretty recently anyway, got into doing past life regressions myself, and it just kind of
Mhm.
happened. And you mentioned like spontaneous past life memories. I also kind of feel like that that happens to a lot of people for some reason lately, and I can't really find a reason.
So I'm probably way older than you are. I'm 53. So I was a little girl in the 70s. And I mean, even then there was, some awareness of this stuff. There was less people into it, and there was a lot more people. I don't know. I feel like Canada's less religious than the United States. I think we're a lot more kind of liberal up here, and um, I, didn't even really know very many people that were religious or even just like went to church. But I definitely, like my first past life memory came up when I was about 5. So that was probably about 1973. And I just randomly remembered mailing a letter as an old woman, probably in the late 1800s. Um, and there was my mom didn't even, she was just like, "You've never mailed a letter." And I was like, "Why are stamps 10 cents? The last time I mailed a letter, a stamp only cost a penny." And my mom was like, "Shut up." I was so angry. I can't even tell you. Like, I remember being irate, a little 5-year-old who's like, "What, what's this world coming to? The price of stamps," right? It was just crazy. But so, I mean, it was happening then. And I mean, there's always kind of maybe been those outliers who were having these experiences. Spiritualism was a big thing in the 1920s. So it's not like it's just happening now. It's been happening slowly. But one thing I've also noticed with clients is people my age, like let's say people in their like late 40s, early 50s, most of them will have fairly normal regressions. You start getting people who are in their early 20s, they're just a bunch of freaks. Like that's where I started, seeing people who were moss or an insect or, a horse or whatever, or an alien. Like the young people that are coming in they're a different species altogether. And I can almost always tell when they walk in the door or I see them, on a Zoom session. I look at their face, I look at their eyes, and I'm like, okay, it's another alien, or it's just someone who is otherworldly. Here it comes. And I'm always guaranteed to have, a fantastic session with them.
That is really interesting. I've talked to a few different practitioners, and a lot of people are actually saying exactly what you're saying, that a lot of people that are in the 18 to 25, 27-ish, somewhere around
Yep.
there, they're squirrels and they're aliens, and I even talked to one lady who said she had someone come in who remembered being an atmosphere on a planet.
Yeah. I had someone who was an energy in a forest. And she said, "I'm kind of purpley blue. I'm almost like maybe an orb shape. I can't really tell what shape I am, but I'm just in a forest and I'm just like floating around." Like, oh, I'm just getting body shivers thinking about that. Um, I had one client, and this is wild. And actually, this client was my age. She was probably in her late 40s, early 50s. It was unbelievable. She didn't know what she was at first. Excuse me. She said, I'm floating, and there's all these beings around me, and they're all kind of like pink, light purple, clear, white, and I feel so joyful. I'm one of them, And she couldn't really figure out what she was. And I didn't know either. I'm like, just, enjoy being what you are. And then she went into like a second, like I moved her to a second experience, and she was in the ocean. At first she was like, I don't know where I am. I'm floating. And then she was like, oh, I'm in the ocean, but I'm not of the ocean. I'm not part of the ocean, but I'm in the ocean. And I was like, oh, are you a fish? Are you plankton? None of those things. And then she said, I'm rising up. And all of a sudden she started bawling her eyes out. And she said, Fiona, the edges of clouds when the sun is coming up and the clouds go kind of pink and gold and beautiful. She said, that's where I am. And then she said, my God, I'm rain. I'm water vapor. And the thing she said that just blew me away, she said, Fiona, like water is conscious. Like I'm conscious. Me and all these these little beings that are around me, like we're all conscious. Like we're alive. We know who we are. And we're so joyful. And I said to her, if you walk out in the rain and rain's falling on your head, that all of that is conscious. And she said, yeah, it's conscious. So drink your water, folks, and like be joyful, because you're drinking like happy little water molecules, hopefully, unless they're pulling in energy, negative energy. When people talk about, blessing your water and your food and stuff, I think that I think that's a thing that should be done. What were you going to say?
Okay. So this is, I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but this may or may not blow your mind if you haven't heard of it.
I hope you're going to blow my mind, Ian.
So there's this scientist who looked at water under a microscope.
The Japanese guy.
Yeah.
I have his book.
Yeah,
Matsu something.
Yeah, I'll find it and link it in the description for the audience.
Yeah.
But for anybody who doesn't know, this guy would take water, and he did a whole ton of different experiences with water, and he put it under a microscope, and he would look at it while saying, things like, I love you, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, things like that. And the water would look a lot more crystalline, and it would look beautiful, and it would look symmetrical. But then he would do the same thing and put it under the microscope when he said things like, I hate you, and you're ugly, and you're disgusting, and you'll never, just horrible things to it. And he looked at it, and it looked disgusting under the microscope. And he did all kinds of different experiences, like playing like hardcore heavy death metal with a horrible message. All different kinds of music, things like that.
Classical music would make it very elegant and very structured and beautiful.
Exactly.
I have that book, and it's such an amazing, amazing book. I think it's called The Emotions of Water. I think his last name is like Matsuro or something. I don't know. But anyways, it's incredible. Like it truly, truly is incredible.
And that's a verification right there too.
Yep. Everything, I believe, has a consciousness. And it's funny because during regressions, I started doing a new thing with clients as part of my kind of induction to bring them into a deeper, more relaxed state. And one thing I'll say to clients, as I'm getting them to relax, I'll say, focus on the trillions of cells that make up your body. And I'll say, just feel, probably your listeners can just do that right now. Like just stop for a second and focus on your cells. And you can actually feel like just a little bit of vibration. And then I'll say, ask your cells to relax you down even further. And you can feel it. And then I'll say, ask your cells to drain disappointment from your body. And I'll go through all these things. I'll get them to drain, doubt or stress and worry or anger. And then I'll say, ask your cells to radiate with peace. And you'll stop for a second and you'll feel this little tiny wave come over you. And then I'll say, ask your cells to vibrate with confidence. And you feel something stronger. And then my favorite one, ask your cells to radiate with joy. And every single client feels like a vibratory shift. And think about your cells, cancer cells, cells that make up your brain cells, your skin cells, different organs. Your amygdala is a bundle of sensory neurites. Like it's a bundle of cells that tells you whether you're in danger or not. So imagine if you're depressed, if you're thinking, angry thoughts, or you're worried and you're like telling stories in your mind, like, oh my God, I'm gonna end up homeless and eaten by cats, or whatever when people catastrophize. Um, but imagine how your cells are vibrating when you're doing that. And just being able to ask your cells, like, vibrate with joy, and feeling there's just like this little uplifting feeling, like it's so healing, it's magical. Like this work, like past life regression isn't just, this is fun, let's explore. Like, it is fun and it is exploring, but we're learning so much about, being human on this planet, the human experience, and learning like so many things. Every session that a practitioner does, something new is learned, and we're all starting to share it on the internet, and we're confirming things like, my client experiencing rain confirmed to me that book that I had already read.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that guy doing those experiments and proving that our thoughts can affect things around us too. And so that's really, and what you said about learning new things and how it's this thing that we call past life regression. It's a process, right? I don't think
Yeah.
that it's necessarily something that should just be a one and done thing. I think that it should be done more, and I think it should be taken a little bit more seriously too, because I learned early on that most of the time you're not going to be running through fields of flowers in these visions. You're going to be dealing with something that is, for the most part, it's traumatizing, and it's
Yeah.
difficult to talk about. But at the end, you're coming out feeling like a piece of you has that you never knew even existed has come back to you somehow. And it's really interesting. And like I told you before we started recording, regardless of whether or not it's real, it's a real experience. You're experiencing this. So whether or not you want to call it your brain making stuff up, it doesn't matter, because you feel, however cheesy it sounds, you feel more complete after you're done doing it.
100%, 100%. Um, I don't know what I was going to say in regards to what you just said. Oh, yeah, I was actually going to bring up people maybe not believing their experience. It really, like, what I will say to clients, and I mean, I know, like, I 100% believe from all the regressions I've done over the years, this is a real and true thing. And lots of clients have been able to, clarify something or look up something and come back and say, Fiona, this was real because I discovered that this flag existed, or this type of ship existed, or whatever. But even if you don't know 100% whether this is real or not, let's say your subconscious mind is taking emotion, because a lot of times trauma happens. When trauma happens, the way we experience it is in a certain part of our brain that's pre-verbal. And that's why talk therapy, while being helpful, doesn't usually really 100% heal us. That's why a lot of times somatic healing, like where you're using more body-based stuff, like that is definitely more healing for trauma. And using visualization is also incredibly healing for trauma. And maybe perhaps your subconscious mind is very creative and is giving you a story that will help you deal with unprocessed trauma. But I mean, I know for me, my fear of my boyfriends being serial killers, that's not because I experienced a serial killer when I was 5. I definitely didn't, or I wouldn't be here to tell you about it. Obviously, that was a past life trauma. Like, I have no doubts, just even how it felt, even what it looked like. And even like one of my worst thoughts when it was happening, my past life self, was, oh my God, my aunt is going to come home and she's going to find this, and this horrible guilt, like, what did I do? And my fears when I would have dreams where I was begging serial killers not to kill me, I wonder if perhaps I begged my lover, like, please don't do this, like, don't kill me, right? Like,
Right.
that's not trauma from this lifetime. There's no way.
Yeah, and it also that begs the question of, like people who have what some people would call unrealistic fears. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
for me, for an example, personal example, I am deathly afraid of heights. I I don't know why I'm afraid of heights, but ever since I was a little kid, I've been terrified of heights. I hate being anywhere. Like I have a hard time getting on my roof to do like roof maintenance. Um, but I never fell. I've never even broken a bone in my body,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I've never fallen off anything. But anytime I'm up high, like looking down, for example, like a reservoir or something, when you're standing at the top, I don't know how many people have had that experience.
Hmm.
I won't even go near the edge. Meanwhile, my family's leaning over the edge, and I'm like, get back here! You're gonna fall! Like, and I don't know where that comes from. So that's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Well, that was like me and Aaliyah. Is that her name? Like, I know you did a
Yeah,
podcast with her.
Alia.
Alia, Alia, yeah. So she and I did a trade because we both do past life readings. So I do mine through email. So I'll process it and work through it, and I'll type as I'm going, then I'll send it to the client. And Alia does hers like through Zoom. So you're, talking to her while she's doing it. So we thought it'd be fun to do a trade and, have a conversation and see if we could collaborate and vent a little bit about some of our clients, perhaps, or just the way things worked for us and what we found difficult and easy. And it was really cool because she did, when she was doing a reading for me, she brought me back to Africa. And it's so funny. Like, I have, I'd like to go to a lot of places around the world. The continent of Africa, especially like, let's say, the Congo. She brought me back to some point where something very violent happened there, and I knew it. I was like, oh my God, this is why I can't watch movies about stuff like that. Anything with genocide where one group of people is killing another, it puts me into the most horrific state. There was this movie called The Constant Gardener. And my husband and I went and saw the movie in the theater. And I got up, and it took place in Africa. I don't even know what was happening because I left, but it definitely had some kind of genocide type thing going on. I said to my husband, like, I'm going to go walk around the mall, and you just finish the movie because we didn't get out much. Our kids were little. Like, I was like, no, you enjoy the movie. I'll meet you when it's done. And I went back to our car, and my face was as when I was walking through the mall, people were gasping and almost running away from me. And I happened to look in a mirror at this little wig kiosk, and my face was like whiter than paper. I looked like a ghost. I went to the car and sobbed. And there's like, I've never had any, nothing's ever happened to me. I've never been to the Congo, but that type of thing makes me act physically ill. Like, I was almost throwing up in the car. I was shaking, I was crying. And Alia, that's what she picked up. She said, oh, this thing was happening. You were in charge of watching for people coming to the village, and somehow you missed that they were coming. So people weren't able to prepare, and there was a full-on attack. And so I probably have a lot of guilt that I still haven't. Maybe I processed it a bit when Alia was going through this with me, and maybe I still have more work to do. I don't know, but um, it was like pretty amazing to have that come up. And I know that was not my that was Alia's subconscious mind picking up on my horror, right? She didn't know about it. I never told her.
Yeah,
So
and how could she know your fears
yeah,
or your feelings about that beforehand?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's this, yeah, no, this work is real. And the more the more people get it done, the more that I do this work, the more that Alia does this work, the more that you do this work. We're all kind of building a case, for it. And as we're doing it, we're changing the way we do it. And I think it's important that we all do collaborate with each other and that we learn from each other. If I have a certain portion of a script that I find is really helpful, I will always share it with another practitioner. And likewise, I hope they're all doing the same, because, I don't believe in it's a dog eat dog world and, try to one up everyone else so you can get all the clients. I think that the more we share, and I think that we're put here to do this work. From talking to you before we started recording, I know 100% that you have like an important component to this. And I know that you're doing something different from other practitioners. And I'm dying to have a session with you because I want to see what you do.
You're really putting me on the spot there.
Oh no, you know what? Like, it'll be awesome.
What you said about people not sharing and like hoarding information is something that Alia and I talked about too, just kind of BSing after the show.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's really sad to me that these people, they won't talk about their process, and then they'll try to get with people, and then they'll ask them questions, like in-depth questions about their process. Like, how do you do it? What do you do with this, and this? And then they won't talk about their own process just because they're trying to get it to do it. And then if they do happen to let something slip and they find out that you're using anything from their process, and obviously this is a small minority, but they'll be like, I can't believe that you stole my process. And it's like, okay, well, where did that come from? Like, why do you got to make it about money when this is the farthest? You couldn't be anywhere farther away from, like, obviously we got to charge money to live, right? But like, why do you got to make it about like a competition? I'm an open book with my process. I'll tell anybody who wants to know what I do.
That's awesome. Well, I even know, I know with BQH practitioners, they are trained, and maybe people will correct me if I'm wrong, but I know when I had a BQH regression, they are not supposed to start recording the regression until after they've done the induction. And for anyone that doesn't know, the induction is what gets you hypnotized. So my practitioner turned it on only after the induction was done. And I know that when I work with clients, I give them permission to record. If we're on Zoom, they can record on their end. And I'm like, you can start recording anytime, the first half an hour where we're just chatting, whatever, and you can record the induction. And yeah, if you want to try using it again, maybe you can use it to some, maybe you'll have to stop at some point when I start asking you questions, but you can use it. And same as you, Ian, I love sharing my scripts, or I just kind of have one made up script, and I mostly do it on the fly. I have a few things that I follow in particular, but then other parts, it depends, probably like you, it depends on the client, right? Like you might feel compelled to do one thing with one person and then something else with another. But I think that we have a responsibility to help our clients and to help their past selves, which in turn is that's helping all of humankind to move up in a spiritual way or in a healing way. And I think it's important. And I think it's important to do sliding scales, to obviously charge a fair amount, so that, I also have another job that I do just so I can pay my rent, right? I'm not fully surviving yet off of what I do, because I don't charge as much as most people do. I think what I charge is fair. And I also, probably, I know you say you do a lot of free work for clients, and I do several free sessions per month, just, different people kind of pop into my world, I'm like, yeah, they need this. And it's funny because the times that I reach out to help somebody, and I hope that anyone hears this and takes this to heart, the times that I've reached out just on my own and been like, that person needs help, I need to work with them, something magical always comes out of it. You know, I always benefit in some weird way. It might be I benefit with a close connection with the person or a friendship, or I witness a healing that is so profound that it changes the way I work or whatever. And I think we all, because I think what happens is when people hoard information and they, you know, do all of that, they're doing that out of fear. So they're working out of fear. They're not working out of love. And I think like we need to work out of love.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. You know, it kind of it just makes me laugh. I don't even get mad at them. It just makes me it just makes me laugh at them. It's like you claim that you're a past life I call us all practitioners. That's what I call just for the science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But
We're
you claim to be a
absolutely.
practitioner of for all intents and purposes the metaphysical, but then you're so stuck with your physical you know, you're looking to get rich or you're looking to be the main person. I think it's more of an ego thing probably, whether they want to be like the number one past life regression hypnotherapist out there. They want to be really well known. For
Yeah. But again,
yeah,
that's fear-based thinking, right? You know, you feel a lack of security in some way.
Right. Yeah, and I tend to agree with you on that too. Excuse me. Kind of moving on from that, I would like to hear from you just maybe a couple of your, yeah, just for sake of like the audience and everything for sure, because I definitely want to continue talking about our processes. But I kind of want to circle back to that. But I'd like to hear just a couple of some notable regression stories that you've either experienced yourself or that you've helped someone achieve that were either just notable or interesting or even just boring. Just anything that you feel compelled to share.
Oh, I just had a fantastic session with two people a couple of weeks ago that really blew my mind. It was funny because I originally was just going to do energy work on this woman. And at the last minute, she was like, my boyfriend, like just because of the way circumstances were, her boyfriend had to come along. And he said, well, I can go sit in your backyard and wait until she's done. And I was like, well, it's like really hot outside. Like you can't just wait for 2 hours while I work with, you know, with your girlfriend. So I said, well, maybe I can work with the two of you. So they came and I'm kind of looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, I can't do energy work with her and him because that's a very personal kind of thing, right? So I said, well, do you guys want to do a regression? Like I'll do a past life regression. And I'm not a super big fan of doing group regressions because you can't ask you can't say to the person like, where are you now? Okay, walk further. You know, what color is your hair? What's the man saying? Like if you can't ask people that in a group thing. But I thought, you know, I'm just going to do this anyway. So I did a regression with them and I would guide them through things and I'd say, okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to experience this before we move on to the next thing. And then I don't know why I did this. I said to them at the end, and this was me because I like to, you know, play with stuff, or maybe it was intuition. So I know we talked about this before we started recording. When I and you do it the same, Ian, when we regress people, we'll get them to create a safe place. And I think a lot of practitioners do that. You know, it's actually a bit of an induction because it does make you more relaxed, but it's also if a client needs to go back to their safe place because there's something going on in the regression, we can take the client back to the safe place. I actually never, ever have had to do that, but it's a possibility. But at the end of this regression, I said to these two people, I said, now I'm going to take you back to your safe place, but there's going to be somebody there. And that somebody, it might be an energy. It might be a person that's passed. It might be a guide, but you're just going to go back to your safe place and you're going to have this experience. So I'm doing this thing. I give them a few minutes. I take them out. And I should say, this guy, the partner of the woman, I honestly I didn't even think he was regressing. I actually thought he was asleep. And yes, people do snore during regressions. He wasn't snoring, but he just didn't seem like usually you can kind of tell when someone's into something and or that they're going to do well. He'd never done any work like this in his life. And I thought, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. So they come out of their regression and both of them start freaking out. So she was actually the skeptical one. She said, I was really skeptical about this. So when I directed them to create a safe place, most people create a spot in a forest or a beach or like a favorite place from a memory. I don't understand why they did this, but she went to a safe place. She said, I didn't create one. I was taken to the ocean. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then the guy said, I didn't create one either. Because I said to them, it can be a place of your choosing. It can be a beach or whatever. And he said, I went into like this dark, warm place and I didn't know what it was at first, but then I could see it moving around me and pulsating and I could see blood vessels. And I realized I was in my mother's womb. And this guy did not look like someone who would go to a place like that. So then at the end of the session, when I brought them back to the safe place, she went back in the ocean, the woman, and she played around with this orca that showed up. And the orca gave her, and I said, the person or entity will give you a message. And the orca said to her, let's play, come and play with me. And she took that to mean that she did need to become more playful. But this guy, he goes back to his mother's womb and his mother's there. And she had passed away 44 years ago when he was 15. She died of a sudden heart attack. And after his mother died, his life was very, very difficult. His dad was an alcoholic and he basically would jokingly say, yeah, I was raised by wolves. And he definitely had lots of struggles, but to suddenly go into his mother's womb and he said his mom was hugging him. Like he said, it wasn't my imagination. It was her. She was with me. She hugged me. She told me she was proud of the path I'm on now. He works with youth at risk. And I think he was maybe at the time starting. And I actually know, I think he said to me, a few days before this session, I was questioning myself. I was questioning my path in life. And his mom said to him, I'm so proud of you. I love the way you've grown up, and was holding him. And we were all three of us crying at the end of the session because this tough guy, had tears in his eyes, and he had just had the gift of being reunited with his mom. And that doesn't happen a lot in sessions. I have had it happen with several clients, but that was one of my favorite sessions up to date, just how powerful and magical, this work can be. And especially if we start to ask different questions and guide our clients in different directions. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, it is cool, and it's powerful too. It's really, really powerful, and
Yeah.
it's really, really interesting to see the places that people will go to. It's a lot of the time it even surprises them.
Well, I was shocked as a practitioner because I thought he'd be like, I went back to, my favorite park when I was a kid, or my grandma's backyard or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I was in this place I didn't know. And it was my mother's womb. And then I saw my mom. So that was a really crazy experience. Oh, I'll tell you a really freaky one that I had. This one was so
please
weird.
do.
Yeah, I had this client from Australia, and she went into a past life where she it looked like it was in France. It was pre-revolution, and she was a dressmaker, or she and her husband owned a store that sold a lot of dressmaking type things. And she was very upwardly mobile. You know, she wanted to be really wealthy. And she had an affair with this dark man. And ended up, her plan was, I'm going to poison my husband. And then you and I, because they're Catholic, you can't divorce back then you and I can get married and we can run this like store and our life will be so amazing. And somebody found out and actually told on her. Or I don't know, somehow the plan was foiled. She ended up in prison for a certain amount of time and then was out of prison after that alone, feeling quite sad. And it was just like, you know, a cool little reading that I did for her. And then about a week later, or maybe a few weeks later, I had this dream. And that guy was in the dream, like the boyfriend, the lover, the dark-haired guy. And in the dream, he was my uncle, and he was really evil and scary. And me and my boyfriend planned on murdering him. And it ended up that my boyfriend killed him and nobody knew. And it was this big secret. The guy's body was dead in this room, and there was like mold and mildew growing around the door. And I knew that I was going to get found out, and I was so terrified. And then in the dream, someone actually called an ambulance, and they took the guy away in the ambulance. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get found out for murder. It's like so scary. And I felt compelled to message the client and just say, yeah, I had a dream about this guy. And the client messages me back and says, like, I need to talk to you. Can I phone you? And here was the crazy part. This client had in real life, in the present, had an emotional affair with a man, but ended it before anything happened. But she was married. And just in the past week, this man had contacted her and said, I'm going to tell your husband. I'm going to tell your kids. I'm going to tell your family. I'm going to tell everyone you know about the affair. And she was like in terror. She was trying to hide this guy. And it was the same thing as my dream. It was like this ugly secret was festering, and it was this man. And she sent me a picture of the man, and it was the guy from the past life. It was the guy from the dream, looked exactly the same. And she said that when I did the reading, she knew that that was the guy, but she didn't tell me. She wasn't going to say to me like, oh, this looks like my lover that I broke up with a few months ago. But it was scary. It was weird how frightened I felt in the dream, you know, how scared I was of being found out. And obviously that's what my client was feeling. Now, luckily for her, unluckily, the guy did contact her husband. But they ended up working the whole thing out. So at least it wasn't a secret for her anymore. But it was crazy how a past life replays itself in this life sometimes. You know, and maybe you've seen that with clients where they'll have a regression and then they'll say, oh my God, you know, the same thing is happening in my life now. You know, they're replaying the patterns and even relationships with people.
I haven't had a personal experience with something like that, really. But I've heard about stuff like that. Actually, if you get a chance to listen to my trailer for my podcast, but in the trailer, I talked to this lady, that chakra healer I told you about. Her name's Tia. Her name's I forget her last name off the top of my head. It's Tucker. Tia Tucker. And she said the exact same thing. She was literally like, you know, you don't have to, you can absolutely remember your past lives, but you don't have to, because if you just practice self-reflection, you can see your past life reflected in your current life.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's why we want to heal our past lives, so that we don't have to replay them. And we also want to heal our present trauma so that we don't replay this trauma in another life as well. You know, like we want to be as healed as we can.
Yeah, and like I was telling you before we were recording, when I first started doing these regressions, a lot of the time, these past personas, they would straight up come out and ask me to go back to, it's usually like a small moment or a moment that they wish that they could have maybe paid more attention to beforehand. So, like two examples.
Mhm.
One guy, he was a soldier in World War II, and his wife was pregnant when he got drafted, and he had to go out, and he ended up dying before he could meet his second born child. He wanted to go back to a moment where he in his life he remembers going in and sitting down at the table and just staring at his wife. And then he asked me to go back to that moment, and so he could say goodbye. And instead of sitting down at the table, he walked over and he hugged his wife. And I didn't know this. The the client told me about this. Like he went over and he
Mhm.
hugged his wife, and then he said goodbye to his son. And the second one was that one I told you about. Guy who said he was from Louisville, Kentucky. He wanted to go and watch his daughter, and he just stared at his daughter, and then he eventually just said, "Well, time to man up. Better get going."
Mhm.
And I just didn't know what to make of that until literally tonight. I didn't even realize, like, it didn't click until tonight that they were getting some kind of a closure, and I was happy to do it. And I think that I always have thought it was important to give these,
Mhm.
I guess now I'll call them parts of yourself, closure,
Mhm.
or these pieces, these fragments, whatever you want to call them. They need this closure, and getting a chance. A lot of them, like, for some whatever odd reason, a lot of the times, and it's kind of difficult for me sometimes, but I get a lot of sudden deaths, people who died very suddenly that didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and
Mhm.
they want to go back, and they want a chance to say goodbye because they never got that. And a lot of the times they'll just be like, okay, and I'll say it's time to go. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. If you need to, you can call out to your guides, and they'll guide you to wherever you're supposed to go. And it's really kind of an emotional experience a lot of the time. And I'm not like a super emotional guy either. I'm traditionally very science and evidence based, so I can't really explain. I couldn't
Mhm.
explain it until just pretty recently tonight.
That's awesome. I spend so much money on Kleenex. I cry like probably like 5 times a week just because I do, and not crying like I'm not suffering. I'm not like taking on empathically the stuff. It's like it never bothers me. It feels good. It feels good to release those emotions because I do think I kind of pick up on the energy of the person and let them express through me. But one thing I always do in regressions, where there's trauma, is is I play with, I shouldn't say play, it's not playing, but it is kind of playing, um, changing the story always. So I had, I did a reading just a few, and I do healings during the reading. So I had a reading a few days ago where a man was a navigator on a ship, and he took the ship into a dangerous situation, like a storm situation, and died. And actually in his death he got a rope or something wrapped around his arm, or was holding on to it, and when the rope kind of swung loose or something, he dislocated or broke his shoulder and then drowned and couldn't even try to swim to save himself because he only had one hand. So what I did in my imagination was I took him and rescued him, and I took him to a dry place. And it ended up being a place that he wanted to be. I can't remember what it was, but I gave him dry clothes. I imagined setting his shoulder, and then I listened to him. I could feel that he had intense shame. Someone had said to him, like, I don't think we should do this. And he didn't, with his ego, he was like, no, it's fine. It's not such a bad storm. And he took the ship into the storm. So he had a lot of guilt. So then I imagined the captain coming in. And the captain came in and sat with the man and said, listen. And it started to almost just play itself out. And he said, he said, you know, you've guided us through so many dangerous things, and you've done a fantastic job. I've always trusted you. But we all knew getting into this that ships sink. We hit storms. This is natural. And then some of the crew members came in and said the same thing, like, no, like, we respect you. And he was left in a situation. And then they all took him to a day, and it looks like it. And just like what you were doing in your sessions, they went to a beautiful sunny day when the sea was quite calm. All the work was done. The ship was very clean on deck. Everything was very shiny, and everybody was just having a really nice day. Like, it was just, they weren't having a party, but it was almost like everyone came up on the deck, and it was just a really relaxing, happy time for him. So we took him out of a horrible, traumatic situation, and we brought him into a safe place where he was connected with the people he needed to be connected to. And that's an important part. Like, you can regress people, but I think healing has to be a big component of it.
Yeah, and you definitely have to get a little bit creative on the ways that you do that.
Yeah, you got to be so creative.
Yeah, you can't approach it the same way every time. And the same thing with me, like when I run into, like we talked about before we started recording, people who are like blocked, who can't see, can't move, they can't do anything. Sometimes you have to spend a lot of time just to be able to even get them to see or experience something.
Yeah.
Same thing kind of goes like with the healing. Luckily for me, the people always know exactly what they need to see, exactly what they want to
Oh yeah.
say goodbye to.
Yep. During regressions, they know. And it's actually fun to get the client to do it. Like, saying to the client, like, what do you think she needs? Well, I think she's taking me here. And the client is just being taken, or the client or the past life self is directing where they want to go, what they consider a safe place. I've in regressions, like, tried to feed a starving child a really delicious meal, only to be said, like, no, I just need soup and bread, because that to them would be what they could understand, or what would taste good to them, or would work for them. So they know what they need. And you can see the difference energetically, like in the client, even just watching their body movements. When you take them out of the trauma and take them into a place of healing and connecting, you see the client's face just relax, or you see a joyful look on their face if you reunite somebody with the, like the man who got to go and watch his daughter play in the backyard.
Oh yeah, that guy, Breck Stevens.
Yeah.
I have a crazy story about that.
Tell me
about like that whole thing. He it's kind of crazy because he literally was, I'm gonna just quote him. I was like, so how did you die in this life? Let's go through your death. And he said, he sat there for a minute all quiet, and he was like, I think, and let me rewind a little bit. It was really crazy because this was my brother's experience, right? I'm very comfortable with my brother, and I know my brother. He's my best buddy. We're bros, and his entire demeanor changed, and he got an accent. He literally went into a southern drawl like this, and he doesn't normally. He slips into it sometimes in his current life. He'll slip into a southern drawl randomly, but he used words during the session that he didn't normally use, like the word jarring. He never uses that. He was like, that was jarring. But after he died, we went to this place, and he had his spirit guide with him, and his spirit guide was holding his hand. And there was this thing that after he died that was just watching him. My brother called it a creepy thing. It was just like something that kept on looking around these pillars at him. He said that he felt like it didn't think that it could be seen, but he saw it. And when he saw this thing, he was tensing up. He was squeezing the chair. He was really tense, and you could tell he was afraid. And where I'm going with this is his safe place that his past life, Breck Stevens went to. was just right outside his house next to his brand new 1979 blue pickup truck. And he was just standing there. And the second that he got away from the quote unquote creepy thing,
Mm-hmm.
he breathed out a sigh of relief and just completely relaxed and was like, oh, okay. And that's when we kind of moved into the saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It almost sounds to me, I almost wonder if your brother has mediumistic tendencies, and that wasn't so much a past life as that was a spirit rescue that wasn't from a past life.
That's
Just
what I'm trying to avoid that possibility because
why are you trying to avoid that possibility?
well, because it scares me because the only time it's ever happened with it with that kind of a possibility is I literally had the same thought, and the only commonality it's happened with my brother and my sister.
Yeah, so it might be, yeah, I was gonna say, because you told me about the one with your sister before we started recording, and I was gonna say to you, like, that, yeah, it sounds like that is like, and that's nothing to be afraid of. Just like the woman who I saved, who was being, torn apart by her doctor lover. Um, I know that was my past life, but it was also a ghost. Like, a ghost isn't scary. A ghost is just a shard of a past life. Like, if you go to a house and it's haunted, guaranteed there's an alive person on this planet somewhere who, if they were to have a past life regression and get it healed, that ghost in your house would disappear. So really, you're working on a shard that's in a house that would be a haunted house, or you're working with a shard that is connected to a person you're regressing. There's no difference. It's not scary. Like, I've done so much work with spirits. Like, that was kind of my big thing. Like, I wasn't going to be doing this past life stuff. I wanted to become a medium because I was put in many situations where there was a haunted house or there was a spirit somewhere that needed help. And I've done a lot of spirit rescue. And I consider past life regression to be spirit rescue. And I don't know if perhaps that runs in your family. But it just seems very, very interesting to me. And I don't know what it's like with your other clients.
With my other clients, I've
Mm-hmm.
never had anything that would suggest that it was a spirit rescue, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
sister called it a possession.
Yeah, see, and see, that's a fear word. Because when people think of possession, they immediately go to demonic possession. They go to like some evil, horrible thing that's like coming after you to do you harm. And honestly, like, we honestly are, we're meat puppets with a soul shard or two or 50 inside us. Like, it's not such a weird and frightening thing. I mean, it can be messy, but I mean, being alive is messy. We're all just messy people, like, trying to do our best on the planet and messing things up all the time. I think a lot of us carry shards with us. So I'll tell you a story. And this is an ongoing client she doesn't get regression work done. She gets energy work done. She has like lots of childhood trauma. So her mom passed away suddenly when she was 7. And then her life after that was difficult. And that's what we work on her with. And a few weeks ago, she was at my house. She was saying, there's something going on with me. I feel worse than usual. I feel so depressed. I feel so anxious. And I looked at her, and all of a sudden I could see this energetic mass on her. And it wasn't black and evil. It was kind of like light purple, and it almost kind of had a jellyfish look to it a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, it's your mom. And what I could tell is that when she was 7 and her mom died suddenly, either she held on to her mom, or her mom, out of guilt, held on to her. But she'd been carrying this emotional attachment, also known, you can tell your sister, as a possession, but let's call it an emotional attachment. I think that, like, or a spirit attachment. I think that's better. So when I recognized it, I said, my God, like, your mom is on you. And then all of a sudden, that splodge, it looked kind of like a light purple splat, like an ink blot. It suddenly moved off of her, came inside me, and she was talking through me. I don't think I've actually ever done that like that. Her spirit came inside me, and I could feel the mom inside me, and I could feel the mom's thoughts, and I could tell the mom had, quote unquote, taken over my body, but not in a horrible way. It was like she was borrowing my body, and she just started crying and saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry these things happened. And my client was able to talk to her mom for a few minutes. And then I could feel the mom leave. And it was, oh my God, it was so crazy and such a beautiful gift. Like, I'm so glad I was able to do that. And the client came back on Sunday and she said, Fiona, I feel so light. I feel so different. I love my mom, and, I missed her, but having her guilt and her worry, I took it on as my own guilt and worry. And now it's gone, and I don't feel that the same way. So if we can recognize when we're taking on spirit attachments, and if we can lovingly help them to move on, like, I think that's why we take them on. They don't come into us because they want to, like, wreak havoc. They're trying to get their needs met. They're trying to get help. And we can do that. It's just knowing that we can.
That's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Fiona for coming onto the show, and I would also like to thank you for tuning in. Remember, this is part 1 of the interview, and part 2 will be released next week. If you like the show, I'd appreciate you subscribing in your podcast player and sharing the show around with anyone you think might be interested, or even someone who you think would be interested in coming onto the show. If you're interested in coming onto the podcast and talking with me about your experiences, send me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
Can you see beyond your mind? Can you shed a light on the treasure that you are? Can you be at ease for a moment? Can you feel that peace and it's owning everything that you are? You already got all you need. You don't need to try so hard. Realize you're right where you need to be. You're headed from the very start.